Recommendation from the Facilities and Academic Unit Naming Committee. Shannon, will you please report on today's attendance?
We do have a quorum in attendance. All trustees are here at this point, except for Trustee Dunn, Trustee Hazencoat, Trustee Hoffman, Trustee Honorado, Trustee Paterno, Trustee Redding, and Trustee Rowland.
Thank you, Shannon. A copy of the resolution has been provided to the trustees in advance. For the public listening to the live stream, the resolution and supporting information is available at www.trustees.psu.edu under the Meetings tab. We'll now adjourn the meeting of the full board and call the meeting of the Finance and Investment Committee into session. Chair Mary Lee Schneider will preside. Mary Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I note that a quorum of the committee is present on the call. The only agenda item for consideration by the Finance and Investment Committee is the proposed recommendation from the Facilities and Academic Unit Naming Committee to name the field at Beaver Stadium, the West Shore home field at Beaver Stadium, in recognition of a transformative gift of $50 million. I will ask Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics, Dr. Pat Kraft, to begin our discussion regarding the proposed recommendation. I'd ask that you please hold your questions until the end of Pat's presentation. Pat.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Good morning, everybody. Members of the board and the FAI committee, thank you for the opportunity to present for your approval a gift proposal for the field naming at Beaver Stadium. I'm here to explain the proposal that was submitted. If approved, this gift, in essence, will help us achieve the fundraising goal of $134 million set by the board last May for the Beaver Stadium revitalization project and continues the incredible momentum we have enjoyed to date. I understand there are probably some questions about this effort, and the presentation I'll take you through should help address some of those questions and concern. If we want to start, Shannon, I think you're driving. I will start with the agenda here. We're going to go through the overview of the gift and the timeline bringing us to this meeting, background on the Wurzen family and BJ in particular, West Shore home, and key points, questions that have come along the way and process, and then we'll talk about Beaver Stadium's revitalization and the philanthropic success we've had up to date. Next slide, please. I believe it's important to start this conversation by explaining some of the process and timeline of this effort. On the 23rd of September in 2024, FAUNC unanimously approved a suggested $50 million term naming level with a maximum term limit of 15 years for the field at Beaver Stadium. Now, the FAUNC, or Facilities and Academic Unit Naming Committee, is an internal university committee responsible for the oversight of naming in accordance with University Policy AD-05. On the 24th of February 2025, the Worsen family and West Shore Home committed to a gift for the naming of the field at Beaver Stadium, subject to FAUNC and Board of Trustee approval. Terms of the gift agreement are $50 million over 15 years, starting in 2025 through 2039. DDAR completed standard due diligence review of the Worsen family and West Shore Homes. If approved, the field at Beaver Stadium would be named West Shore Home Field at Beaver Stadium. Next slide, please. Worsen family. BJ is an alum, a 1990 alum, and the family are Penn Staters through and through. They care deeply about this university. Johnstown, Pennsylvania is where his hometown is from, or where he's born and raised. His early career, he grew up in a family-owned window and door manufacturing business. He's a leader in the entrepreneur space, as he was a finalist for the National Entrepreneur of the Year in 2023 by Ernst & Young. Next slide, please. West Shore Homes, a Pennsylvania-based company founded by BJ and committed to the Penn State community and their customers. It's founded in 2006 in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Its focus is one-day installation for bathrooms, windows, and doors. It has over 3,000 employees, and it's based on innovation. It's based on data-driven, scalable systems for efficiency. Next slide, please. So some of the key points and explanations to some of the questions that have come, and as we got to this process and through this process into where we are, the next 3 slides hopefully will provide those answers to some of the questions. What is the payment schedule for the contribution? There will be an annual payment throughout the term, but the gift is front-loaded to reduce the borrowing required for the Beaver Stadium revitalization. This is a really important factor and important play in our financing of the revitalization. $10 million will be paid over the next 10 years, while the remaining 40 will be paid over the next 15. Under what circumstances could naming rights be revoked? Failure to adhere to the contribution schedule is one. Then policy AD-05, authority to name, addresses this as well. The Board of Trustees shall have the authority to revoke the name of a university facility or academic unit in the event that the benefactor for whom the facility or academic unit was named, if they are later convicted of a felon or of a felony or a felon, engages in conduct which in the sole discretion of the Board of Trustees is significantly detrimental to the reputation of the benefactor, such that continued name association between such individual and university facility or academic unit be contrary to the best interest of the university. Next slide, please. Has anyone else gone through the stated process for field name and made a proposal? The answer is no. None that we have met with have met the threshold of the FAUNC. How long has this gift been under consideration and been discussed? Discussions started in late summer of 2024 around suite options and new opportunities in the stadium. However, as the conversations continued, it became apparent that the Worsen family and West Shore Home were interested in a much larger partnership, ultimately leading us to where we are today. Are there any off-ramps over the 15-year term? Other than failure to make contributions per the agreement or violation of AD-05 language, the agreement remains in full force over the 15-year time frame. Next slide, please. Is West Shore Home in a financially strong position to support this gift? DDAR completed standard due diligence review of the Worsen family and West Shore Home's ability to fund a gift of this size. No issues were identified. What is the FAUNC process? Michael Wade Smith is the chair of the committee. He can answer other process questions, but let me walk a little bit through this. The Facilities and Academic Unit Naming Committee process is established in University Policy 8005. Any and all official namings on all Penn State campuses go through the FAUNC process to establish minimums and targets for fundraising levels on spaces and to provide a recommendation to the president on all namings. This process ensures alignment with institutional priorities and establishes procedures. The 8005 formula establishes a minimum gift level for naming. In this case, the field was initially 28 million, but after review of national comparisons, industry standards, and other namings across campus, ICA and DDAR recommended a more aggressive target to the FAUNC. On recommendation of ICA, DDAR, the FAUNC unanimously approved on the 23rd of September, 2024, a suggested $50 million naming level with a maximum term limit of 15 years for the field at Beaver Stadium. Next slide, please. These are some comps. First slide, walk you through some of the comps that are in perpetuity, meaning for the term, for the existence of time, in essence. These are all publicly available for you to take a look at. You have North Carolina, 25 million, Purdue, 15, Wisconsin, 13 million. If you go to the next slide, these are term gifts. You can see the different varied amounts in years. I do want to note, so the University of Washington's 41 million, that is including naming of the field along with the athletics village, athletics facilities, and extends the naming rights of the basketball arena as well. We had an outside analysis, Elevate Sports Ventures, provided fair market and on-field name analysis on this, where it ranged from 1 to 3 million. They agreed that, and as did FAUNC, that the terms provide us most flexibility for our future. West Shore Homes field average is 3.3 million per year. As we have discussions with peers, you will see that most naming deals will be around this $1 to $3 million mark as these start to move to the market in subsequent months and years from our colleagues. Next slide, please. So the Beaver Stadium revitalization philanthropic success. In less than 10 months, ICA has raised $130.675 million, or 97.5% in signed and verbal commitments of the $134 million goal given to ICA on May 21st, 2024. The fundraising efforts for the Beaver Stadium revitalization project have secured 4 of the 5 largest donations in ICA history. If approved, the Wurzen family and West Shore Home gift would be the second largest cash gift in Penn State University history. The number of donors with $5 million or more in lifetime giving to ICA has more than tripled since 2022, with the majority of those gifts tied to the Beaver Stadium project. Next slide, please. I appreciate and thank you for your time and consideration of this important effort in support of the Beaver Stadium revitalization. It concludes my briefing. If there are additional questions, I think we have time, but I defer to the chair on how we should proceed next. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Given that the F&I committee will first need to vote to recommend this resolution to the full board, I'll ask the questions at this time be limited to members of the F&I committee only. Once we reopen the session to the full board, we'll take all other questions from the board. I would ask for everyone to use the raised hand function as we go through this. And again, F&I committee only. Are there any questions or discussion from members of the F&I committee? Pat, I have a couple, if that's okay.
I had one. I'm sorry, Mary Lee. Go ahead.
Okay, you want to go first, Anthony?
No, you go first, Mary Lee. I have quite a few, so you go first.
Okay. All right. So Pat, as we go through this on the actual nature of the gift itself, can you confirm, I want to make sure I understand, you made a great reference to the borrowing and the cash flow. So my understanding is that part of this payment is done in 10 years, so it's an accelerated payment, despite a 15-year term. And much of it is paid twice a year, so we don't wait till the end of the year to get a payment, right? That there's a mid-year and a year-end payment,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So that creates a nice cash position as we go forward through the borrowing process.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks for that. The other question is, my understanding, and it's from my expert use of Google only, is that that when others are involved, if other organizations have come to us with a deal of this significant magnitude, and again, thankful for it, we would likely have to pay some kind of percentage. I think I've read as 25% of such a naming opportunity. This was a direct negotiation and discussion with the Wurzen family, correct? There was no middle person.
Correct. We
That's
dealt
correct.
with yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Anthony.
Thanks, Mary Lee. Hi, Pat. Thank you. Congratulations. I do have a couple of questions for you. Would you consider the naming of the field at Beaver Stadium to be a matter of great public interest, something that Penn State community would be very interested in?
I have learned everything we do in ICA is of great public interest to the Penn State community.
Terrific. You use the term transformational with respect to this gift, and obviously $50 million is a large amount of money over 15 years. When you did the due diligence, you referenced standard due diligence. Now, for the record, I did make a request of what that entailed, but unfortunately no one was able to share that with me. Could you share with me what that due diligence entails?
Well, yes, we used, as I referenced, Elevate, who's done these analysis and have done these deals. They're an award-winning firm. They've done NCAA, NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, MLS, NWSL deals of this nature. You can also go back and look at the comps that are provided.
Yeah, let me interrupt you, Pat. I didn't mean due diligence on the valuation. I meant on the donor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So Alyssa's new, so I don't want to put her in this, but every gift, honestly, everything that we do, it goes through the DDAR process, and it's very thorough. LexisNexis review, it goes deep into National Sex Offender Public websites. They go through Dun and Bradstreet. They go through the court record review. They do, it's 2, 3, 6, 8, 10 different websites to analyze what they can find. So they do a deep dive. DDAR has been doing this process of background research since the 90s on every really major gift, but any gift of not just 50 million, but any gift that comes to the university.
So in your estimation, Pat, what about this gift makes it transformational as compared to, say, some of our other significant gifts? We have the Pagula Ice Arena, Schreier, Honors College.
I would put it in the same category as Schreier, as Pagula. Pagula helped establish our hockey program that just swept Michigan this weekend and is poised to make the NCAA tournament. I think when any gift is the second largest gift in a history, much like Penn State, in a school like Penn State, it's a cash gift. Now there's a component, there's other ways to give gifts, but second largest in the history of Penn State University, I think that's pretty transformational. It also allows us, as Mary Lee referenced, in this revitalization of Beaver Stadium, it puts us in a strong position to not only we will hit 134, but we will blow past 134 in fundraising, which helps our borrowing and helps the department exponentially from a financial standpoint. So yes, I do consider that transformation.
Well, I appreciate your definition of transformational. With respect to the valuation that was done, I requested a copy of the report prepared by Elevate, but was told by the Chair Kleppinger, that is, Mary Lee, that the fair market value from Elevate is the output of a proprietary methodology to which we have not been given access. So do you actually have a report from them defining the valuation? Because as you noted, originally the committee used a level of $28 million, and now that's changed by, apparently, I would imagine, because of what you received from Elevate. So do you have a report from them with respect to this valuation?
I've given you what I have. Their system and process of what they do is proprietary.
Yeah.
How they go.
So let me
And
finish.
Anthony-
Mary, you don't have to interrupt me. Because I know we're short of time. But, typically, because I've done some valuations in my life, you get reports from other people who do those valuations. And I'm sure you've seen that too, right, Mary Lee? So.
Yes, I have. And we actually requested that, Anthony. There is no firm out there that would give us an actual report showing their proprietary. And if you've done valuations, you know that there are typically factors in there that are somewhat unique to each of the firms. And you can decide whether, they pass your muster or not. But there were no firms that were willing to give us their actual engine, their actual calculator, if you will, for their valuation, just the output. And that's what Pat had shared.
Well, but the output, is there a report from them with that output, or is it just here are the numbers for these locations?
Yeah.
The location numbers were actually, I think, from publicly available, but the Elevate number, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, was given to you verbally, correct?
Correct.
So thank you. That's the clarification I wanted. And when was that valuation provided to Penn State, Pat?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I could find out.
Well, I'm just curious as to, who had knowledge of the valuation, because as you know, you and I have been talking about this for quite some time, and there was nothing forthcoming. So I'm just curious as to when that information was available and who had that information.
And we can get back on that, Anthony. I would note that we had the FAUNC, and perhaps the next time the FAUNC meets, they can discuss the acronym around their name. It's difficult, but they had set the thresholds back in earlier in the year, earlier or late last year. So we had that as a threshold, right?
Right, but again, what was the basis of that? Because what I'm getting to is, are we shortchanging ourselves? But we'll get to that a little bit later. And with respect to this gift, Pat, are there any other privileges that the donor is going to receive besides the naming? Because I saw a reference in a document as to multimedia contract and some things along those lines.
No, not at all. BJ and West Shore Homes are sponsors with Playfly, but that is not us. That is through Playfly Sports Properties. So they invest in that as well.
So with respect,
Anthony,
no,
another question. Can I come back to you?
Sure.
Since you've had 4 or 5, thanks. David?
Yeah, this is really kind of a follow-up to Anthony's line. Pat, in addition to the Elevate estimation, what other sources did you look at or speak to try to verify the valuation of the 1 to 3 million on field naming rights?
We have many industry contacts that we connect with. I would argue the best, I think Elevate does a phenomenal job, but no one is going to go on the record. This is their business and can impact their business. But we continue to evaluate this. Were we maximizing the value? We are, if not right on line, probably the highest, from our understanding, the highest field naming gift at this time in the country.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
I was going to get back to my last question, I think, Mary Lee, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So there, you mentioned Playfly. So this was a direct gift, so Playfly doesn't get a cut of this, right?
Correct.
And any other direct gift that you might be negotiated or negotiate with the university directly, Playfly wouldn't receive a percentage of. Is that not true?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm good for now, Mary Lee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. All right, any other questions or discussion from members of the committee? All right, hearing no further discussion, may I have a motion from a member of the F&I committee to recommend the resolution to the full board for consideration and action? And Shannon, if you could put the resolution up there, the recommendation, that would be terrific. And for the person that moves and seconds, if you could identify yourself when making the motion, may I have a motion?
Sure, this is Bob Beard. I move we accept the recommendation for the naming of the field as presented.
Thank you, Bob. May I have a second?
Second, Fenza.
Thank you, Rob. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Hearing none, all those
Yes,
in favor?
no.
Yes,
Yeah, please. I couldn't get the raised hand up fast enough. Madam Chair, I ask that the entirety of my comments be entered into the full record of this meeting, and I will provide a copy to Shannon Harvey. Someone once said, certain people will be upset when you speak the truth. They might get mad. They might get really mad. That's because they are still living the lie you've exposed. Stay strong, speak truth. Do not allow yourself to get pulled back into their lie just to make others happy and yourself miserable. I expect my comments here might do just that. This is a very sad and sobering day in the history of Penn State. Today, for many of us, the music dies. Today, the Penn State we know and love is no more because today we're about to commit the ultimate betrayal. How fitting given that Catholics around the world are celebrating the Lenten season. The only question we should ask is who will play Judas? For a few silver pieces, we're about to sell our souls, and in doing so, turn our backs on two people who gave so much to this institution, Joe and Sue Paterno. Since my return to this board in July 2020, I have urged the administration and trustees to meaningfully recognize the innumerable contributions of Joe and Sue Paterno to our great school. At the February 16th, 2024 board meeting, I offered, then withdrew, a resolution that would provide for such acknowledgement, declare a Suzanne P. and Joseph V. Paterno Day this fall, and name the field at Beaver Stadium after the Paternos. For my efforts, and in speaking to a matter of great public interest, the naming of the field at Beaver Stadium, I was criticized by some here and in fact subjected to retaliation by this board. What you don't know, and what I will now share, is that my efforts were disclosed fully to the then board leadership and the administration almost 2 years in advance of that February meeting. In fact, then board leadership was working with me and several other trustees in this endeavor. Since we now live in the era of Doge, I want to be fully transparent with my fellow trustees and those listening via Zoom. On May 24th, 2024, the day after Memorial Day, Sue Paterno, along with Dana Harris, the widow of one of the university's greatest ambassadors, Franco Harris, met with Dr. Benaputi and Michael Wade Smith, her chief of staff. This was a meeting arranged at the request of Sue Paterno. During that meeting, Sue asked simply, "Do you intend to name the field at Beaver Stadium after Joe?" Dr. Puti replied in a word, "No." Sue then asked, "Why not?" The response from Dr. Benaputi, "I don't have the words to explain." In July 2024, the Letterman, as an organization, sent a letter to athletics urging to have the field at Beaver Stadium named for the Paternos. Unfortunately, they received no reply to their request. On January 22nd of this year, an employee of the university, himself Letterman, hand-delivered 2 sealed envelopes to athletics, one addressed to the athletic director, the other addressed to head football coach. The contents of the envelope included a cover letter and more than 75-page nomination for honorific recognition and satisfaction of the requirements of University Policy AD05. This package was in effect a submission to the Administrative Committee on Naming University Facilities and Academic Units. There's your acronym. Given no response was received to this request, that same Letterman on February 12th couriered to Michael Wade Smith, the chair of the naming committee, 6 envelopes containing the same contents provided to the athletic director. Michael acknowledged receipt via email and informed the sender that this was a matter that should be brought forward by athletics. Once again, no response from athletics. What troubles me most is that I've been asking for this valuation of the field's naming rights since July of 2022. To date, I've received no information. More importantly, I believe by agreeing to this proposal today, we will breach our duties as fiduciaries. Given the great public interest around the naming of the field at Beaver Stadium, I believe we should pause to explore other possibilities, including Paterno Field at Beaver Stadium. You want to see transformational? If we agree to Paterno Field at Beaver Stadium, we will raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Thank you.
All right. David, did you want to say something?
Yes,
Go ahead, David.
Sorry on the slow hand there. Thank you, Anthony, for those comments, and we understand that perspective. I do want to note that the university is extremely thankful for the numerous contributions that have come from the Paterno family over a long period of time. And over those many years, there have been significant recognitions of the Paterno family's support to the university, which include their philanthropic efforts, their commitment to education and academics, and particularly to our student athletes, and the many accomplishments that those athletes have achieved both on and off the field. And I want everyone to know that those recognitions will continue and can be expanded upon in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed?
No,
No.
Okay,
Roll-
I will ask Shannon to do a roll call vote. Shannon?
Trustee Beard,
Aye.
trustee Fenza,
Aye.
trustee Harpster,
Aye.
trustee Kleppinger,
Aye.
trustee Lebrano,
No.
trustee Lynch,
Aye.
trustee Regal,
Aye.
trustee Schneider,
Aye.
trustee Short,
No.
trustee Sokolov.
Aye.
The motion carries 7 ayes, 2 noes.
Thank you, Shannon. That concludes our agenda for the F&I Committee. The meeting of the Finance and Investment Committee is now adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mary Lee. And at this time, the meeting of the full board is now back in session. The Finance and Investment Committee recommends to the board the proposed resolution to name the field at Beaver Stadium, the West Shore Home Field at Beaver Stadium, in recognition of a transformative gift of $50 million from the Wurzen family and West Shore Home. I would ask that trustees limit their questions at this time to 1 per person. After everyone who wishes to ask a question has had the opportunity to do so, we will then allow second and third questions. Are there any questions for discussion from members of the board at this point in time? And I will ask you again to use the raised hand function. Narain.
Pat, does this agreement in any way restrict our ability to recognize the Paterno family for their contributions in a different manner?
No.
Thank you.
I think Karen was next.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Pat, can you give us a sense for how the name of this is going to show up in media and on the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, you know, we have mutually agreed and we get through this process. So it's in essence on the field. I would take it like the college football playoff marks at the 20s. It will say West Shore Home Field there, but we need to get through this process before we start to dive into that.
Okay, thanks.
Barry.
Sorry there. So in essence, what we're talking about here is a $3 million a year revenue source in exchange for advertising, marketing, public relations for a business.
No. There's 2 things. Yes, but it's not you have to separate the multimedia rights partnership that he has with Playfly. So West Shore Home says that. Remember, so yes, in your sense, there is obviously great exposure to Beaver Stadium, but his marketing rights are through the Playfly agreement.
Okay, but there is a contractual quid pro quo that in exchange for this, I'll say $3 million a year. I know it's roughly a little bit above that they will receive that marketing exposure, correct? That's in the agreement?
Yeah, you're going to get exposure for being on the football field at Beaver Stadium, yes.
Okay, and we're obligated to do that.
Correct.
Okay. Now there are other entities that support Penn State athletics. In fact, you know, our fans, alumni, and the folks who come through the turnstiles every Saturday afternoon in the fall actually contribute per year about 30 times as much, right? I know based on projections here in the upcoming years, you know, in $90 to $100 million in that ballpark, and we're a little under that now, but that's going up. So that's an annual contribution, if you will, of 30 times as much in order to attend the games at the stadium, which is a very significant part of the overall budget of ICA, which we know is expected to grow to, you know, about $300 million per year in the near future, which interestingly, although it's not equal to the total amount we spend each year on all of our Commonwealth campuses put together, it certainly would be the better part of it and may become close to as much depending on what happens moving forward with the university. So I just want to put some of that into perspective and make sure that we are considering the concerns and desires of those who fund this entity to a far greater degree, not to lessen the impact of $3 million a year for advertising either. Now, there are a lot of options here. Obviously, as we all know, as a board, we got this information over the weekend, even though apparently some folks were involved in it for many months, to say the least. And there are a lot of options here within this broad space. We could look at stadium naming. I think I know, if you look around the country, I know when USC looked at stadium naming versus field naming, it was for about 20 times as much money as they eventually got for field rights. Now, the reason they didn't do stadium naming is they actually leased their stadium from the county or the city, and the county or the city, whoever it was, balked at that. So they had to walk back from that agreement. That's something we could certainly consider. And obviously our stadium is Beaver Stadium. That means a lot to a lot of people. It means a lot because it's a legacy, it's a tradition, it's a history. Quite frankly, most Penn Staters couldn't tell you who James Beaver is. And that's just the truth. But it's a legacy and it's a tradition. But that's an option we could look at, is do we name the stadium? Why we wouldn't? There would be a lot more money, but the concern here would apparently be that we want to honor that legacy. We could look at naming the stadium and the field, which could bring in both a lot more money and also give us the opportunity to honor our legacy and respect our fans and alumni. And that certainly could be an option that essentially kills two birds with one stone, maximizes revenue and honors the legacy of this university, and could do that by honoring the legacy of those who are much, much more well-known to our fans and our alumni than is James Beaver, quite frankly. And of course, I'm speaking of Joe and Sue Paterno. We could look at any number
I don't want to interrupt you here. I just want you to know we have 4 or 5 other questions in line here. So could you get to the question to Pat that you're leading up to?
Sure, but I think the context is important, David. And as you know, we just got this information this week, and some of you may have had it for a long time, but we didn't. So the question is, when do the desires and the concerns of those folks who support this program to the tune of $100 million per year, with ballpark figures, when do they come into play? When do they get priority? And we have opportunities here, as I said, to kill two birds with one stone and honor our legacy, honor the desires of our alumni and our fans, and yet still enhance our revenue streams. We have a chance to do that now. If we do what we're being presented with now over this weekend, we lose that opportunity. So the question is, are we prepared to discuss those options? And there are other concerns, right? There are concerns about whether or not, there might be valuations, there might be options that could do even better, right? Anthony raised some of those concerns earlier, so I won't go back through all of them. But we have a lot of issues that have essentially been dropped onto us over the weekend, even though others apparently knew about it for a long time, which is kind of a disturbing culture. And I don't see that we're prepared to discuss that. I don't think it'd be reasonable to ask the members of this board to be prepared to discuss those things on such short notice. And I think we owe it to the university and every stakeholder group of the university to do that, because this is impactful, it is generational, and it may not be in the proper direction, or certainly not in the optimum direction. If we're not prepared to take the time today to fully discuss these options, and I don't think we even have the information to do that, then I would propose that we table this issue until at least the May meeting of the board, and in the interim have those discussions and look at, from a broader and more inclusive perspective, exactly what our options are to both enhance our revenue streams and to honor our legacy and honor the desires of those folks who support us so tremendously each and every year. And I think we have an obligation to do that.
Pat, would you like to respond to the other options that were referenced by Barry?
Yeah, this is the option we have in front of us. There's a bunch of things you could do. This is what we have in front of us.
Okay, I think, I'm not sure who was next. Ted probably was a little before Carl, so we'll go to Ted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Past Chair Schuyler made a point that just because you attend football games doesn't make you an expert on stadiums. Even though since I was a child, I've been to more games than any other trustee, have owned a suite since before they were built. I'll accept that. Matt also said that just because you stay in hotels doesn't make you a hotel expert. Even though I've spent thousands of nights in Marriott's and Hilton's, have 1.7 million Marriott points, and are in their highest level for lifetime. I accept that. But I know real estate. I've bought and sold properties in Pennsylvania more than 8 times, Ohio, Connecticut, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Florida, etc. I sold and project managed centers, a $12 million University of Virgin Islands project I mentioned before this call started. Worked with IBM Real Estate on 21 application marketing centers across the country, including naming in 21 cities. Led IBM Business Recovery Services with annual revenues of $1 billion, which included real estate. So I know pricing is about comps and location. I therefore know that you never take the first offer. You put out RFPs, and when you can't find true comps, you do significant research so that you don't sell below market. Last year, I put forth a proposal that naming Sue and Joe Paterno Field is worth $260 million. So I can't support selling cheap. If the stadium really needs money, and it does, please let some of us trustees raise $100 million or more. Also, I say with great emotion, a week ago today, I eulogized a great Penn Stater and great friend to Penn State football, Lou Prado, in front of Carol Prado and their family, Sue Paterno, Jay Paterno, Tim Curley, and Pat Kraft. I said for a decade, I've been trying to physically honor the Paternos and added my commitment to Carol Prado to honor Lou, Sue, and Joe. Please help me do that. Let us raise $100 million. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ted, for those comments. Carl?
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question, Pat. Will there be any bonus for when we inevitably host another playoff game?
No, it's a good
Or
question.
no?
No, this is the price. It's, if we hold a concert or whatever, it'll still be that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Matt McGloin?
Second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Barry Alvarez Field at Camp Randall Stadium, Bobby Bowden Field at Bill Campbell Stadium. I played for Joe Paterno for 4 of my 5 years at Penn State and had the honor and privilege of being his last quarterback. In the summer of 2011, the university had decided to name the field after Joe. And here we sit 14 years later, and the field at Beaver Stadium has not yet been named Paterno Field at Beaver Stadium. Is this because we're fearful that we may receive some criticism for it? Personally, in my career, if I was concerned with criticism, I would have never set foot on Penn State's campus in 2008. If we listen to criticism, this university would not have gotten through the 2012 year, which, as we all know, was the darkest period any university had ever faced. Without 2012, a year in which we essentially faced the death penalty, this university would look a lot different than it does today. And believe it or not, even without Joe in that year, it was still a major part of Joe Paterno's legacy. How, you ask? Without his teachings, we all don't get through it. Without the impact he had on us, we all don't rally together. Without the things he instilled in us, dedication, teamwork, honor, commitment, being a part of something bigger than yourself, we all don't get through it. There is a great amount of us that still carry on Joe's legacy and will continue to do so. But by not giving him the honor he deserves, you're trying to eliminate the past and everything he stood for. Every player that played for him, every player that walked through that tunnel, every player who graduated, every player who may not have made it, every player whose life may not have been changed for the better. You're trying to erase 46 years as a head coach. And what's happening now may look like a successful move, but I don't believe it's a very honorable one. And success without honor is an unseasoned dish. It will satisfy your hunger, but it won't taste very good. I'm urging you to do the right thing for Penn State, to do the right thing for the Paterno family, to do the right thing for Joe. there shouldn't be a price for our identity here at Penn State. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. Narain?
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate that we're making this a referendum on how we feel about Joe Paterno and the Paterno family. I know I speak on behalf of most of my peers, if not all of my peers on the board. We all have tremendous respect for the family and appreciation for all of their contributions to this university. And I do believe, and I'm committed to finding the way to recognize him in an appropriate manner. I look at this as a financial decision based on our fiduciary responsibility, specifically our duty of care. I think Pat and his team have brought forward a very attractive proposal that seems to be consistent with the market. It does not preclude us from doing anything else to recognize the family that I think might even be more appropriate than the naming of a football field. Matt, I agree with you. Those were great examples. But at least my experience is Joe Paterno was a hell of a lot more than a football coach. And I think it might actually be too small to put his name on the football field at Penn State because his contributions were way beyond being a football coach. So I think it's just frustrating that this is becoming a referendum on how we feel about Joe Paterno, because I think that's wrong.
Thanks, Narain. Don Cairns?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Narain just said. I envision a way to accept this gift. We need this $50 million, but we also absolutely need to honor the legacy of the most impactful individual in the history of Penn State. And I'd like us all to commit to each other that we're going to be diligent about doing that in a very meaningful way. So that's where I stand, and I agree with Narain. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Don. Anthony, your hand is up. I don't know
Yes.
if that was from.
Yeah, no, it's up.
Okay, I wanted to give everyone else a chance before I called back to you.
Thank you, David. So I want to address first something you said. You made a comment earlier, Dave, your comments. Again, because we live in a period of Doge now, full disclosure, last Wednesday, Sue Paterno received a phone call from President Bendaputi and Pat, ostensibly to alert her to what was going to happen on Monday. And her question to them is, well, what are you going to do for Joe in the stadium? And their response was, well, we've set some room aside in the sports museum, and we're going to put his office in that museum. And her reaction to that was, that's just not sufficient. Call me when you have something. I share this with you because I suspect that's the sort of thinking that we have, that somehow that will be sufficient. We are very transactional these days. Unfortunately, our university has become very transactional, and we, I think, forgotten the past. And for many of us who grew up in humble beginnings and maybe have achieved a modicum of success, so we sometimes forget those things. And I will take exception with comment that was made by my esteemed colleague, whom I have great respect, Trustee Gersa-Haney. He and I have spoken about the Paterno matter at great length. And if I'm not mistaken, he has, and I'll let him speak for himself, but said if we had to put to a vote to name the stadium Paterno Field, that he would vote for it. So, I'm not minimizing what's in front of us today. I mean, I give all the credit in the world to the family, and I'm sorry that they have to be involved in this conversation, but we've never had a debate or discussion publicly about a matter of great public interest. That is the naming of the field after the Paternos. So it's incumbent upon us to have that conversation. What do we fear? What is the problem? I wish someone would explain that to the public so they understand as well. Some of us have heard in private some conversations, but that doesn't suffice when it comes to the public. We're a public institution. We get hundreds of millions of dollars every year from the taxpayers in the state of Pennsylvania. We owe it to them too. So I don't want to make this a referendum, but unfortunately, we're making a decision on naming, and naming is important. And so hence, this is where we are. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Anthony. We're running close to the end of time. Brandon?
Yeah, thanks, Cliff. Look, I'm a proud product of the Granton experiment, and I love Joe Paterno. And no matter, where you stand on this issue, you can't deny that there are a large number of alumni that believe that Joe was mistreated, and naming the field was a way to make things right. I believe Penn State has a bright future, and the future is much more important than the past, but I don't believe we can reach our full potential by simply telling our alumni to move forward. As a result, while I appreciate the generous contribution and the partnership, will vote no on the field naming today. There, as Noreen, Clep, Don all mentioned, there are many other ways that we can honor Joe, and I'm committed to continuing to work to build consensus on ways to get it done. I believe that the majority of the board recognizes Joe's contribution and wants to honor him, as so many of you have mentioned here today. That said, one of the main reasons why the board has not been able to build consensus is the disruptive and inappropriate behavior of a group of trustees who claim they want to honor Joe. The blame for not getting this done falls on them. These trustees have actively worked to undermine our current football program and the broader university. They've staged publicity stunts in an attempt to focus attention on themselves and derail negotiations to get things done to honor Joe. They've tried to hurt the current football program by spreading misinformation and attempting to block any financial support for the program. They've leaked selected information to the press and told half-truths in interviews to undermine leadership and to paint leadership in a bad light. They filed costly lawsuits and self-serving lawsuits against Penn State, which have drained our time and resources that can be allocated towards other challenges that the university faces. I ask, how could the board majority build a consensus around honoring Joe Paterno with a group of trustees that have taken such a hostile stance towards Penn State? The answer is clear: they can't, which is why these trustees are to blame for not having Paterno field. I'll continue to work with my colleagues to build consensus around finding other ways to honor Joe, but unless these trustees change their inappropriate and disruptive behavior, I'm afraid that we will be in this same spot as we are today. So to those trustees, for the sake of honoring Joe Paterno and the future of the university, stop actively working to undermine Penn State.
Thank you, Brandon. I'll call the question at this
Well,
time.
wait, Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order. When a member is attacked, maybe not in name, they have a right to respond. And I will only say that under the law, the discharge of one's duties as a fiduciary is very personal. There are standards that have to be met. But if somebody believes the best interests of this university are served by doing something one way, then they have every right to support that belief. And since this matter has never been put to a vote, the matter hasn't been closed. So to suggest anything other than that, I think it's disappointing, to say the least. Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion at this point to approve the proposed resolution.
Chair Cleppinger, I have a question here.
Oh, you already had a question. I didn't see your hand, Barry. Is this a new question?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Now, we've heard a lot about, honoring Joe and Sue Paterno, and it's an important issue. It's a very important issue. It's an issue that has been there but unaddressed for the better part of 15 years. And a lot has been said about that, and I'll leave that at that for the moment. But what we're forgetting about as well is this is an issue for hundreds of thousands of Penn Staters, alumni, fans, supporters, and it is they too who deserve more than a little bit of respect and consideration from this board. And to ignore those concerns and those considerations of those who essentially fund our operations is as a Penn Stater, it's heartbreaking. As a trustee, it's extremely disconcerting. And to those folks and you know, those of us who live in the area, those of us who interact with a lot of Penn Staters, like most of us do, we feel their concerns, we understand their concerns, and we also feel and understand that they're essentially being tossed to the curb. And in this case, for $3 million a year of advertising revenue. And now this proposal that
Barry, I think
we're
these
supposedly
points
looking
were
at
made in your first
is-
comments. This is
this-
repetitive at this point.
Well, this proposal that we're
Being
supposedly looking
repetitive
at
at this
is
point, Barry, we need to move on.
is mutually exclusive to doing some of the things that we need to do to respect all of those hundreds of thousands of Penn Staters out there. It's mutually exclusive and it's terminal for at least a period of 15 years. We need to, I believe that we need to properly respect those folks and have a serious, honest discussion and deliberation of these concerns, as opposed to here's the information over the weekend and we have a fait accompli vote. I think it's extraordinarily saddening for me, and especially in a position to represent the concerns of all those hundreds of thousands of Penn Staters who've done so much for this university. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. At this time, may I have a motion to approve the proposed resolution to name the field at Beaver Stadium, the West Shore home field at Beaver Stadium? Please identify
move, Schneider.
Please identify yourself when making the motion. I heard Schneider as the main motion. Is there a second?
Second, Regal.
Regal second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Anthony?
Mr. Chairman, I ask that the entirety of my comments be entered into the full record of this meeting. I will provide a copy to Shannon Harvey. 1983 was a watershed year for Penn State, both athletically and academically. On January 1st, our beloved Nittany Lions defeated the Georgia Bulldogs 27-23 to claim its first national championship in football. But something else happened that year that would set the course for us to become who we are today. On January 22nd, 1983, just days after the victory in the Sugar Bowl, Penn State held its regularly scheduled Board of Trustees meeting, and Joe Paterno was invited to speak. His message that day speaks to the profound impact of Paterno as an academic visionary. Most people were expecting him to ask for more funding for football resources or to talk about the successful season. Instead, Paterno delivered a speech critical of the board's reactionary and conservative governing style and pushed the trustees to launch a serious fundraising campaign to strengthen academic units and bring in world-class professors. It was a bold move for a football coach at his first board meeting ever, no less, to call out his bosses to use the momentum from football's recent success to build a better university. This speech led to the campaign for Penn State and the fundraising excellence we have today. Some might ask, why look back now at such a groundbreaking speech more than 50 years ago? Fair question. Since my return to this board in July 2020, I have urged the administration and trustees to meaningfully recognize the innumerable contributions of Joe and Sue Paterno to our great school. Sue turned 85 last month. If you visit Joe Paterno's gravesite, you'll find these words from Robert Browning on his headstone. Ah, but a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven's for? Joe Paterno was an educator first and a football coach second. We were incredibly blessed to enjoy the benefits of his visionary thinking, and all of us in this room should be immensely proud of the culture that his thinking helped to create. Joe Paterno's contribution to this university can never be erased, and he will never be forgotten. So my fellow trustees, we have reached a moment of truth. Are we going to honor the people who have literally given their lives in the pursuit of a better Penn State? Or are we going to allow fear-mongering to prevail? At this moment, I'm reminded of the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. On March 4th, 1933, the country was almost 3.5 years into what would become known as the Great Depression. History will note that on that day, FDR was sworn in as the country's 32nd president. His inaugural address to the nation was noteworthy for its reference to the memorable phrase, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." But what most people don't know are the words that follow. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance, better known as fear-mongering. We have an opportunity to fulfill our mission of teaching, research, and service by using this as a teachable moment. So let us do what is right and just by significantly and meaningfully honoring Sue and Joe Paterno for their lifetime lifetime contributions of time, talent, and treasure to this university. With that, Mr. Chairman, I offer the following amendment to this resolution. Whereas the humanitarian and philanthropic activities of Sue and Joe Paterno are well documented, and whereas the Paternos worked to enhance the academic stature of Penn State by uniting students, alumni, faculty, and staff around accomplishments on and off the field, and whereas the Paternos generously donated to the university for scholarships, the Paterno Library, the All Sports Museum, the Pasquarella Spiritual Center, and endowed faculty positions and building projects, and whereas Joe will be remembered not just as a coach, but as one who, together with Sue, his teammate in life, made Penn State a better place. And whereas Joe Paterno served as an assistant football coach for 16 years, as athletic director for 2 years, and as head football coach for 46 years, and whereas the grand experiment, as it came to be known, was Joe Paterno's unique philosophy to treat athletics as inseparable from academics, and whereas more than 80% of Joe Paterno's players graduated, and the environment he inspired created a graduation rate gap of 0 between black and white players. And whereas Joe Paterno is the most successful NCAA major college football coach with a record of 409 wins, 5 undefeated teams, 2 national championships, a combined 27 Eastern and Big Ten titles, 23 top 10 teams, and 35 top 25 teams, bowl record of 37 total games with 24 wins, was named AFCA National Coach of the Year, a record 5 times, and was enshrined in the College Football Hall of Fame in 2007. And whereas Joe Paterno coached 78 first-team All-Americans, 47 academic All-Americans, 16 National Football Foundation National Scholar athletes, more than 300 future NFL players, 12 College Football Hall of Famers, as well as 3 National Football League Hall of Famers. And whereas Joe Paterno's only addressed the Board of Trustees after Penn State's first national championship, he challenged trustees to make the most of the magic moment and focus on our academic shortcomings and enhance our cultural diversity. And whereas even after Joe's death, Sue continues with steadfast commitment to the university she loves, as evidenced by her work with the University Libraries, Paterno Fellows Program, the Student Care and Advocacy Emergency Fund, and whereas few embody the essence of the Penn State alma mater like Sue Paterno, as demonstrated by her philanthropic activities, including her oversight of the Beaver Stadium run for Special Olympics, an organization formed to create a better world by fostering the acceptance and inclusion of all people. And whereas the Penn State Board of Trustees would like to fittingly recognize the many contributions of Sue and Joe Paterno, now therefore be it resolved, the Penn State Board of Trustees declare Joe and Sue Paterno Day at a date and time to be decided in the fall of 2025, and the field named Paterno Field at Beaver Stadium at that time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a second?
Second.
While there's a motion and a second on the amendment, I must rule the amendment as out of order because it's inconsistent with the naming protocols that the university has at this time. It did not come before the FANUC and is not timely to present at this point. I will now call for a roll call vote on the resolution on the screen.
Trustee Beard,
Aye.
Trustee Black,
Aye.
Trustee Brown,
No.
Trustee Cairns,
Aye.
Trustee Collins,
No.
Trustee Davis,
Aye.
Trustee Delegati,
No.
Trustee Detweiler,
Aye.
Trustee Dietrich,
Aye.
Trustee Dunn. I think Trustee Dunn is absent. Trustee Fenchek,
No.
Trustee Fenza,
Aye.
Trustee Gersahaney,
Aye.
Trustee Harpster,
Aye.
Trustee Hazencoat, absent. Trustee Hoffman, absent. Trustee Kane, Trustee Kleppinger,
Aye.
Trustee Krieger,
Aye.
Trustee Lebrano,
No.
Trustee Lynch,
Aye.
Trustee McGloin,
No.
Trustee Nassib,
Yes.
Trustee Honorado,
Aye.
Trustee Paterno,
No.
Trustee Potts. Trustee Potts had to log off at 10:30. Trustee Quintos,
Aye.
Trustee Redding, absent. Trustee Regal,
Aye.
Trustee Rowe,
Aye.
Trustee Rowland,
Aye.
Trustee Schneider,
Aye.
Trustee Schuyler Kevin,
Aye.
Trustee Schuyler Matt,
Aye.
Trustee Short,
No.
Trustee Sokolov.
Aye.
The motion passes with 22 yeses and 8 nos.
Thank you, Shannon. On behalf of the board, I want to express our deepest gratitude to the Wurzen family and West Shore Home for their visionary generosity today. Their extraordinary gift is yet another testament to the power of the Penn State community coalescing to invest in a bold and dynamic future. This remarkable contribution will not only transform the game day experience, but also provide invaluable hands-on learning opportunities for our students, helping to shape the next generation of leaders and innovators. BJ and PJ Wurzen, along with their partners at West Shore Home, are setting a new benchmark for how philanthropy, and innovation can drive meaningful and lasting impact at Penn State. We're profoundly grateful for their leadership, commitment, and belief in our mission and the future of our university. With our agenda concluded, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, David.